Hi, good morning. It's Sunday today, and I'm here at Cinerama Empire to watch the documentary about Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela celebrated his 100th birthday last July, and to commemorate him, there was a documentary made for him about his trial during the South Africa regime. So let's have a look. This event is actually hosted by UN Geneva and Cine Onu. So let's have a look who are the people inside, and also at the same time it's for free. And my husband is very much interested on documentaries, and it's something that quite interesting to actually educate ourselves about. So, good morning, darling. So here we are inside the cinema hall to queue up for the event. So the queue is until there downstairs, and it seems to be a popular event. So have a look. With the queue, I'm going down to the cinema. Ooh, excited much. It's a free seating, so it's good to be early.
Ambassadors are showing up for the screening. They do make a difference because ambassadors did attend the Rivonia trial, which lasted for about 9 months, and it made a difference in the long run. They reported, they listened carefully to what the defendants had to say, and then at a later stage they teamed up with the United Nations and of course with the ANC and various anti-apartheid movement, and that collective effort ended up by freeing the South African people. So it's such a screening to make sense to me, and I'm very grateful that you invited me and that you organized this screening this morning. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much for being here. And I see indeed several colleagues sitting here in the room, not the least the Ambassador of South Africa, but also the Irish Ambassador. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure for me to welcome you, and it's also very much a big pleasure to see so many of you coming to view the State Against Nelson Mandela and the others. Today we honor the lives, but also the battles of Nelson Mandela and his fellow accused, Dennis Goldberg, Ahmed Kadrada, and Andrew Mlangeni, along with their lawyers George Bezos and Joël Zoff. They played an outstanding role as advocates of human rights and are some of the best examples of people whose dedication to equality and whose perseverance and principles not only created change, but also inspired generations and continue to inspire generations globally. I think the movie, Mr. Director, has been viewed at Cannes Film Festival and has recently nominated for a French César in the category of documentary. Congratulations for that. It is really a pleasure to have one of the movie directors, you, here with us. And let me also welcome again, as I said, the South African ambassador, with whom we co-sponsor together with the French mission at this Cine Onu. Today's movie is also a tribute to what I would call human rights defenders. These are brave men and women worldwide whom Mandela inspired and who, just like him, tirelessly defend those same ideals and universality of human rights, even at the cost of their own security. So we have to stand up for our rights, but we have also to stand up for the rights of others. In South African tradition, the spirit of Ubuntu, which means I am because of you. Mandela's message, I think that's a very strong message, remains very pertinent today, even more than ever, as we find ourselves with a challenging global context. Human rights, their universal nature, are being challenged by growing populism, by growing nationalism, but also by increased racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. This is clearly in stark contrast with Mandela's inspiring words. He said, "I detested racism because I regard it as a barbaric thing, whether it comes from a black man or a white man." He said also, "May your choices reflect your hopes and not your fears." I think Nelson Mandela had a gift for words, or better, he had a wisdom like no one else. These words were also more important today than ever. Intolerance indeed rises from fear being fed by populist discourse. Now more than ever, we need to build inclusive societies and treasure our diversity. I'm proud to say that the European Union and South Africa are strong partners. We share common values, we work together on improving human rights globally and on ensuring the commitments we have made to protect human rights of all citizens and fully implement them. We appreciate also very much our cooperation with our good friends of the African Group, also here in Geneva, and we have partnered together with them on various topics, including we continue to partner with them still now.
I hear that I read that you basically stumbled upon these 250 hours of audio archives, and it was an incredible opportunity for you, and you decided to make this film. Could you briefly tell us maybe about this?
Yeah, thank you. The trial wasn't filmed. In fact, I don't think there's a single photograph which was taken during the trial, which lasted for 9 months, but it was recorded on a obsolete kind of media called dictabelt, which is like soft vinyl, translucent soft vinyl, which you can fold. They were blue and red, and they had been gathering dust for more than 50 years. In the year 2000, the British Archives digitized the 4-hour speech by Nelson Mandela, which he made from the dock, but using dictabelt players which go back to the 1950s, and in doing so they damaged the dictabelts a little bit, so the South African authorities decided to put the digitization process on hold because they didn't want to damage the whole archives.
And you saw the documentary, and what were your impressions as you were watching this documentary?
Let me thank you first, Program Director, and also thank the maker of this documentary. It's such a wonderful confluence of events that brought this thing together, that take us back in our history to how South Africa came to be where it is. And it reminded me when I was thinking of it that in order to get here, it took a French intervention. Madame Mitterrand deciding that somebody had to create space for the government, apartheid government, and the ANC.
So thank you very much. And I have a question. So we know that today, as Madam Ambassador said, multilateralism is challenged. And I think that all the story about Mandela is also challenged. We can say that. We have a lot of critics against Mandela and the others that they are terrorists. We heard that also in South Africa, I think. And also we know that ANC admitted that there were some accidental accidents during the fights against apartheid. And on the other hand, we have also some other groups. We had some other groups during the 1970s that fought for their cause, and but they are now they are accused that they are terrorists. So if we take a critical approach, how not to be a terrorist? How would you explain this issue to people that are critical against Mandela? Maybe Clarisse suggested a concept of universality, so universalization of the concepts of apartheid maybe is one of the answers. I'm not sure that I'm clear, but if you can answer.
People that defined Mandela as a terrorist have since apologized. To my understanding, some of them have apologized. And they even went further. A prime minister of a European country was campaigning for him to be hanged. And that former prime minister has apologized. the critical thing for me is the right to self-determination. The right to self-determination. And there are various aspects of the UN frameworks that we have that give us a safe space to be able to determine what is happening in a country. Where there was wide-scale abuse and denial of rights, torture, arbitrary detention, disappearances of people. There's a time when South Africa was at war with its children. Some of whom disappeared. Large numbers are still missing today. Large numbers are still missing today. That is a state that requires action of a particular kind, especially if it's armed to the teeth. A variety of actions. We consider that. We would open up the trade union front. We would open up women and seek solidarity. The churches were involved in the end, and parliamentarians were involved in the end. There is an element also of self-defense. You know, I taught at the school that led to the uprisings in 1976, where I saw children, and I actually taught in the class, the group of youngsters who first went on strike, challenging a suprastate for virtually denying them education overnight. I don't know then how the response to that can fit the category of terrorism. On June the 16th, I was a very young teacher, moving through police stations and mortuaries, looking for youngsters who had disappeared. Going through piles of bodies to identify whether this was my student, whether that wasn't my student. Children were forced to live lives that children shouldn't live. No 8-year-old or 12-year-old should find themselves having to defend themselves against a state armed to the teeth. That's immoral. No 12-year-old should have to wake up and say, today, how do I plot my route to duck the bullets and confrontations with the soldiers in the townships?
Merci.
Ambassador, thank you very much.